It is 10:03 on July 12th. This is the Policy and Instruction Subcommittee meeting for the East Haddam Board of Education. First thing on our agenda, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And as if you didn't already know, the exits are at either end of the building, and you can beat feet out of here if you need to that way. All right. The first thing on our agenda is a policy we actually just completed. We're not going to be looking to change anything, but I think our guest here, Mr. Ritzak, had a question he wanted to ask us. And you're going to be involved in the next session, so why don't you come join us at the table? Oh, wow. And, yeah, come on over here and give us your name and your address officially.
Broadcast anywhere?
You will be, yes.
Yes, we are.
We're planning on blackmailing you later, so be careful.
For radio, but I'm not sure about this.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so you had some questions about this, I think.
No, just, I think item 6 in the bylaw is what references us as a Booster Club representative. We want to put up banners as a fundraising idea, similar to what they do at Little League. Dutch Enterprises, for example, supports Hail Ray Athletics. It would be a renewable thing each year. We would put it up. We would take it down. There would be no effort needed by the school system. I guess in reading through that, just what would be the protocol? We're ready to go if given permission. We have a fundraising chair who would be in contact, I assume, with either the principal or you, Dr. DeBrito, with a letter. We're ready to go out with a letter to businesses requesting, their interest, and from what I understand, you're the one that gives the ultimate approval. So just tell me what we need to do. We're having a meeting on the 27th of July where we're planning for next year, and we'd like to get this out going for the fall season.
We have a form, so I'll just send you the form. And then it's just a signature. You write what the intent is, and then I just sign it.
Okay.
Goes through Kelly, goes through my office.
All right.
So
that's
simple.
pretty simple. Pretty simple. So I'll tell my fundraising chair that that's what we're doing, and she'll be in contact with you, and away we go. So that's pretty simple.
And just for the record, what we did in paragraph 6 of that policy was based on my understanding anyway, that it would be appropriate and useful to do that. So you're doing exactly why we did that policy change.
Okay. All right, great.
That's what it was for.
Well, appreciate that. We're looking, the Booster Club is looking to, establish ongoing, fundraising opportunities that don't require new initiatives each year. If we were to mail out something August 1st saying, would you like to re-up each year for September 1, I think that'd be pretty easy to do. And that way, if we can have a consistent amount of money coming in, we can support the kids in greater. We'd like to increase the scholarship amounts that we give, even establish some new ones, and just do more for kids. So I think it's a win-win. All right. So, any questions there?
Sean, did you say something?
No, that was mine.
No, I didn't. Nope, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm just got the camera off because I'm flipping my phone back and forth.
I think Sean
Okay.
is actually a member of the Booster Club, correct, Sean?
I am, and hopefully I'll be taking a trip to your party soon.
Right. So he can
Sounds
be our
good.
liaison to the board. How's that?
Sounds good. Listen,
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Sean.
No, I was just saying absolutely.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is the policy regarding facilities use. And if it's okay with the rest of the team, I'd like to have Marty stay here. Although he's no longer the athletic director, he spent close to 50 years in this district much of which was as the athletic director. And he may have some input or some insights to share. I did share our document, so he's looked at it. Is that okay with the rest of you?
That's fine.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Okay. All right, so policy 1330. What if any, I had sent out a note saying that there were some substantial revisions from our first look at it. What, if any, feedback, questions, comments do people want to offer?
I have a couple.
Go for it.
I wanted to add something that was in the CABE policy to after item 6.
By the way, one quick heads up, everybody. I had a problem last night. My hearing aids failed to charge. I can barely hear anything. Do me a giant favor and shout at me this morning.
Okay, you got it. So.
Go ahead, laugh.
Here you go. Can I roll you one?
I'm trying to find.
Did you hear that?
I did.
Okay.
It was sarcastic. Sarcasm seeps right through.
I don't think we have a hard copy of CABE's policy, but I just took the language directly from it.
Okay.
Basically, I wanted to add an item 7 that basically copies what CABE's policy says.
Could you just
which
read the
is-
language to us?
Sure. Groups desiring continuing use of facilities must reapply annually. And the second sentence is, the superintendent will maintain a list of school facilities usage by non-district groups or individuals.
I have no objection. Anybody else have any concerns about that?
None.
None.
Okay, then if everybody's in agreement, Terry, why don't you do me a giant favor and just email me that language and I will add it in.
Second item is in section 4 under the paragraph that says supervision.
I'm sorry, really, just to circle back, so there's 2 number 6s. The number 6 that you want
You
to
gotta
add-
speak up, Cindy.
I'm sorry, the number 6, were you looking at the one under the regulation or under the policy? I just wanna make sure I put it in the right place.
I think she was talking about the policy.
Policy,
Under the
number
policy.
7.
Okay.
She's
Yeah.
gonna add a number 7.
Number 7 under policy. Okay, thank you, sorry. They're both in here, I just wanna make sure it's clear.
Okay, so under section 4 of 1330R,
Okay,
I wanted to talk a little bit about representation, who's representing the group that's applied. Outside, I think we need to have a conversation about this to clarify this just a little bit further. Outside of requiring liability insurance, I think that it would be helpful to address the different levels of risk involved that supervision would need associated with different activities. So in other words, I realize that there's different levels of risk for those who use our facilities. So I wanted to talk about possibly a need for certification and safety requirements for sports groups or nonprofits versus individual taxpayers who are using our facilities. So for example, you have John Doe, who's your local taxpayer, wants to use a track to walk or run in the morning, okay? There's minimal risk there because it's just that one person. There's no requirement for certification. There's, he follows the facility rules and the restrictions, those will apply. It'd be great if they provided emergency contact information if something happens on the field or in any of our facilities, but, I think it's not mandatory. However, when you have an organized sports group, for example, Little League or any other kind of organized group, the risks are higher. And, we're talking about injuries from sports activities. You're talking about contact sports. So I think there's a difference there. And, obviously liability insurance is typically provided. However, I'm thinking about the immediate safety of these children. So I wanted to know if we could require, at the very least, that coaches have certifications in CPR and sports safety, at least for the groups.
Full disclosure, Terry was nice enough to give me a heads up about this question last night. I spoke to Lisa Conroy this morning for about 20 minutes. She warned me that doing this could be a disaster. The youth leagues in town are not required to have any kind of certification for people to participate. Most of the volunteers are just that, they're volunteers, and they're not required to have a first aid cert or anything like that. So we might effectively be shutting out half of our citizen use, if not more.
Understood.
I didn't know that beforehand, I had to ask.
I'm also, I'm concerned about the safety of our children and of any group that is using the facilities. Something happens on that field and you don't have and again, I'm not saying a certified trainer, I'm saying somebody who knows CPR, somebody who has knowledge of first aid. If you've got a kid who gets injured and somebody who doesn't have a clue on what they're doing picks up that child and throws them in a car and off they go, to me, it just seems like we would be, not following a better protocol. Maybe it's, if not requesting a certification in CPR, then at the very least, an emergency plan.
Can I add to that, and just using Little League as an example because I'm in that? For my children, I sign paperworks and waivers and liability and all of that to the Little League program that they are responsible, in charge. They have their plans for all of that, and that's probably for most organizations in town, even Parks and Rec. Summer camp, you have to fill out a ton of forms. So I think the organization part of that, I feel like might be kind of being taken care of within each organization. Are you thinking more of just the public, folks from public coming
Safety, right?
in?
We're just thinking
I'm just
safety in
thinking
general.
safety.
And
Okay.
so we don't supervise any of these organizations. All we are is just a conduit to allow them to use the facilities. So that's why all of the paperwork that you're describing, and whatever safety nets exist are within Park and Rec or within these organizations. I don't know if school districts that go to that level of supervision and authority, all we're saying is you've got to have whatever the insurance company tells us they need, and we're just offering them the space.
I'm sorry. I think that if you do start requiring that or putting that information in our policy, it opens up our liability to whether or not they're being certified. So if it for Little League, and I know like when I was part of an organization, our group organization required our coaches to actually have certification, but that was besides the point. But for Little League, again, the parents sign off on it. If we start delving into what those coaches are doing, I feel like you're now opening up a possibility that the Board of Education and the town somehow is saying, we're going to take responsibility to make sure that the coaches know what they're doing. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to be, we just aren't using we're just letting them use the facility. If something happens, the liability protects us from that. But I think if you're saying, we promise that this coach is certified, that's opening up a little bit more of a door for us to be in charge of that organization or responsible for that
Because we'd be
organization.
held liable.
Yeah, we
If
might
we're
be
the
liable.
ones
Exactly.
doing all of that safety net type of protocol, like as if they were our employees, that's what Cindy's saying. Now we're actually saying we're taking on this responsibility,
I
and
see
we're
what you're
putting it
saying.
in print that we're taking on this responsibility.
What if there was a little bit, and I don't know if this is for policy or regulation, that it's it's suggested that any organizations using our facilities,
I think that's more of what I'm getting at. Maybe instead of making it a requirement, which would then open us up to further liability, that it's suggested as an added safety measure.
Well, speaking for myself, I don't think there's anything that says that we can't say organizations are recommended but not required to
Yep.
provide something. I am reminded of something that happened with one of my uncles about 45, 55 years ago. He got sued after a snowstorm, and his lawyer told him that if he had left the snow alone, he would have been fine because it would have been an act of God. But once he shoveled and didn't do a good enough job to remove the ice, and the guy fell, that made him liable. So,
Interesting.
Sean, what do you think?
I'm totally in agreement with everything being said. I do like I don't think it's hard or a bad thing to do the suggestion, but not required. I definitely agree with Cindy as far as we open up the can and just being a part of all those, being a coach in all those organizations. I think you keep it within the organization and it's their responsibility to have whatever requirements they feel is necessary. We start requiring that at a higher level, we're going to lose a lot of coaches, which we already lack. And I just think it does open up, it sounds like we want to do safety, but we might in turn be hurting a lot of organizations instead. But I definitely agree with the suggested practice, but not required, sentence.
I do love the emergency contact alternate contact. I think that's a great idea. To have an alternate contact for the supervision, I think that's simple.
Can add that to our form.
Yeah, just a simple saying, who is gonna be the onsite? We can ask that question, who's the alternate? I think that's an important thing.
Do you have any concerns, Dr. DeBrito, about whether or not adding a recommendation would create any kind of liability for us?
It does pause to add in any language.
what if it was added to, something along those lines were added to the application?
A little clause. in
A little
there.
note saying it's suggested but not required that you have somebody on site who is trained in safety. If you do you want to put down that contact?
I think that's a really good suggestion.
So they don't have to opt out for it, and they don't even have to respond. But if somebody's like Little League, they have a coach or an organizer that's on site that is specifically trained, and they're like, hey, we have this person, here's the contact if you have any concerns as a parent or an administrator, then that could be there, but they wouldn't be required to fill it in.
Let me take a look. I think it's something we should probably review deeper, just to make sure that we're not opening any doors. Maybe it's something we can ask legal what their feeling is. I don't think it's a bad idea. I just want to make sure that it doesn't say, I don't want any implication to say that we are now taking on the responsibility that we knew that this organization was on our property and they had or did not have a CPR certified person.
I understand that.
So I just don't want,
Yeah, I think we should seek.
I think we should just seek a
counsel.
little clarity.
Well, at the risk of pushing this off another bit of time,
But that could be a
could we
supplemental.
Well, it
could
was
we
already
bring that
approved.
back in,
Yes.
something like that could be added once we know, we wouldn't have to hold up everything else
It's
before
already
adding it?
approved this policy,
No,
so,
it is not.
so
It
we
got
know
sent
when it's
back.
back, okay.
No, it's not.
Okay.
So if we,
I mean,
once that got checked in, we would just need to update the form.
Right.
We wouldn't
The
have
form, we
to,
wouldn't need to hold up the policy.
Right, the form should not hold up policy.
Because we were gonna go
I
to
don't
the
know
other
how that works, because
subcommittee.
the forms have always been in everything together. So I don't know how that works, but I know what you're about to say, and I agree with you. There's no reason we can't pass it off to, by the way, in case some of you, and if I haven't been clear in anything, as we were working on this, I got more and more uncomfortable with the idea that policy was setting fees, which is really business and planning operations. So the intent right now is for us to complete our work and then hand it off to Kira and that other subcommittee. And I'm hoping that everybody is okay with that.
I don't think
Yes.
I think it's a good practice not to put fees in policy because then you have to update them every year.
Right, and that's part of,
And that's a
that's
lot
part
of-
of the motivation.
Yeah, so I think having fees as a supplemental, the other thing with forms, just as information, they're technically part of the regulations, which does not have to hold up policy at all. So the forms we do change in office, and it doesn't, I don't think that that should hold up pushing the policy forward either, because there are tweaks that I know Don and I need to make to the form that I don't wanna hold up the whole policy because of that.
Okay, are we in agreement that Dr. DeBrito will seek a little guidance from the attorneys and we'll move forward on the rest of it? And
That's
make
fine.
changes as needed if and when it comes to it?
Agreed.
And we're gonna still
Yes.
pass it on to business.
Yes, assuming that we get that far. You
Yeah.
know, right now, we've only had 2 bits of feedback from one person. There's other people here. So, do you have anything else, Carrie?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. How about you?
I have nothing to add, I think, from my limited knowledge of rules, laws, forms, that what I see is good.
Okay. Sean, anything?
No, I'm gonna second that. I mean, I've read through all of it and, nothing jumps out. I like the, the fees, section of the tiers. I think that all seems pretty straightforward without dollar amounts associated. I really appreciate, that, getting rid of all that, but nothing jumps out to me that is a showstopper. So I'm going with the professionals on this one. Everything looks good to me.
Okay. Mr. Ritzak, anything from you, sir?
No, I think it was a really good discussion, and everybody made really good points. It's so hard to find coaches, as Sean said, having just gone through the recertification process every 5 years. To get your initial, it's really time-consuming and costly. So you're not going to get rec and Little League coaches get to that level of a high school coach. So
Right.
the other thing in reading through, if I read through the policy, somewhere in there, I think it said that there would be a lead person for each organization once a year, maybe meets with the superintendent to go over it. Was that sort of correct?
There's a section, I believe, and there's a section on sort of pre-approved outfits, which I
Right.
think includes things like Little League, where, it's basically the same groups of people over year after year. And it talks about that. I think that's what you're referencing.
Yeah, that's what I am.
Yeah,
I
but
think
it's
could be
at
wrong.
once a year meeting, if there's a lead person, if the emphasis clearly is stated at, safety and having someone if possible.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
under
Pre-approval.
8, under the regulation 1330R8, a couple paragraphs down is the pre-approved.
Approval.
Just if
key
nothing
holders
else,
once a
it's
year.
emphasized how important it is to have someone that does understand and has practiced CPR, first aid, et cetera.
I agree. The only thing I would say is that decisions to hold meetings or not hold meetings, that's not policy, that's her.
Yeah. No, it's really just about pre-approval, which, yeah, it fits in line. Yeah. And I apologize, I was thinking of the other policy that was approved,
Okay.
the original one.
Just one more comment. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
Don would answer this, but when I was AD, we always had a floating AED. That was one that was assigned to outside, but it was always on the inside, and it was brought outside. It had to be remembered to be brought outside by someone.
At the risk of sounding like an idiot, what's a floating ADD?
Well, it's an AED that was assigned to outside, for the trainer,
An athletic director?
or athletic director had to bring it out, but I almost think now.
But what is-
With the
Oh,
nice,
okay.
nice facility,
Yeah,
Defibrillator.
AED, not ADD.
well, I don't think you have your hearing, did I missay it?
No, I think I misheard it.
AED, yes.
I'm sitting there going, what the hell's an ADD?
A floating one.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I'm sitting there thinking,
that
who
we-
cares if he floats?
That
Let
we
him wear
purchased
floaties.
one- That we purchased one that is left in the facility building that now exists.
Yeah.
You know, rather than having it, it was either in my room, in my closet, in the storage room in the high school. We have the ones that are on the hallway that are pretty accessible, obviously there. But I think one should probably be outside that people have access to, and maybe in that meeting yearly, you know, if you're using the track, the field, you know, here is everything that you need if you do need, and maybe even a medical kit, you know, a sports medicine kit, even though each team is supposed to have one could be left down there, just as a thought, to kind of at least cover, you know, our idea that
You
we
needed it,
know that, you
sure.
know, liability is important and
Sure.
all these different
Peace
groups.
of mind that it's there. Don, we don't have anything like that,
So the schools have them, so
but the location.
well, it wouldn't be available to outside groups anyway, because it would be locked up inside, the first aid kits. So the schools, when they have functions, they have.
Got
They
you.
have their own bags, they have
Yeah.
that stuff. The outside groups, they use and all that stuff to come with their own.
Gotcha.
I don't think they
Okay.
come with AEDs, but I know they come with first aid bags.
Yeah, and I would get a little nervous about providing that stuff to outside groups for the same reasons that we're nervous about telling them whether they should or shouldn't have certified people or that kind of thing. Once we start, you know, I could have this horror show of somebody needs an AED and it turns out that ours is faulty and they die. Now what? I don't want to think about that. I don't want to think about them dying, but I really don't want to think about the lawsuit. Anything else? Can I have a motion to forward this to the Business and Planning Subcommittee with the intent to get a little legal guidance on the recommendations and possibly make some changes on the form if that becomes a thing?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 All right. Pardon?
Motion carries.
Yep. Motion carries. I never bother saying that, but it's true. Everybody knows it, so that's fine. I'm getting teased left, right, and center here.
So you're all set now, right?
I'm all set.
I think so.
Yeah, you can bolt,
I
you know.
do have one question though, concerning the fees that are gonna be referenced to the business and planning. When might that fee structure be in place?
I'm
Even
not
though-
gonna speak for another committee.
I'm just saying that even though I'm no longer the AD, because people in my previous life know what a nice field we've had, I've had people reach out to me saying, we'd like to rent your field, so.
Which is why we're doing all this.
I understand.
We're aware of it.
So-
And basically what you're saying is try and hurry up and get it done as soon as possible.
I am.
I think that business and planning will try to do that, but I'm not gonna speak for them.
Understand.
Okay.
But,
We would
Fall.
ultimately love to have it done before the school year.
okay.
We don't, yeah, but
Well, I
it
am
would,
on
by
that
the time
committee,
it
so
would,
By the
Make
time
sure
it
we
gets through
get to that.
everything, it's months.
Okay.
We try.
I just like maybe to add about the AED, what you just said about not providing it, and I do understand that, okay? But I think it's imperative that the AED that is assigned for the outside use gets to those fields at each game, okay? We do not have a trainer, which
we subcontract.
we do not have a trainer at every event, and if we did, that would be the responsibility, I would think, of the trainer. So if there is not a trainer, each coach that is outside needs to know where that AED is in case of an emergency, I would, and that's on the school side, not on this side where we're talking about outside use, okay? So, however that's gonna be accomplished, I think that's really important.
just for clarity to make sure I'm following, you're talking about school use, not external.
Right,
Our
school.
Yes,
Our
I
sports
completely
teams.
agree. Goes without saying.
You know, maybe having one like the hallway one put out in the building, and maybe it's not made accessible to outside groups, but at least the coaches that are for baseball, softball, and track and soccer will know that inside that facility, then they should all have keys.
Maybe the athletic boosters could buy us a new one, and we could put it in there.
I'll take that to my next meeting and, we'll see what we have, all right?
You did talk about this additional fundraising.
We're gonna, okay. Well,
Marty, thanks for joining
Thank you
us.
very much for your
Yeah.
time.
Anytime, man, thank you.
Okay.
And I appreciate the offer of a loan of a hearing aid.
Costco, go to Costco. There.
Oh, I have them, it got unplugged, that's all.
Well, I'm saying you can buy a cheaper pair for backup, you know?
Here's a thought. All right, take care, guys.
Have a good weekend.
All right, so next on our agenda is discipline reporting. And just as a reminder to everybody, this is a follow-up to an earlier policy change, and it's on the agenda just to keep us thinking about it. It is still unclear to me that Dr. DeBrito has had any time to work on this, and I understand that, but we'll let her tell us what she wants to tell us.
Well, Chris couldn't be here today. He coaches Little League for like his own kids. And when you do well, more games get added on, right? So he had sent a communication to me that, you know, he was expecting to be here, but he couldn't. So I didn't want to have the conversation without him being present. It would be good to have an admin rep be here. So apologies for that.
I'm not sure any apologies are necessary. So are we okay continuing to table that until next meeting and see where we get?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, great. Next item on the agenda. We need to set a meeting schedule for this coming school year. And I'm thinking the first thing we do is pick our August dates. But I want to suggest something else which is kind of allied to this. I personally feel like we've done a pretty phenomenal job of addressing policy stuff and getting things done, just being effective in that regard. And I think this morning's discussion was a good example. Something came up, it's worth considering. It doesn't need to hold up everything. Jackie was right. We move it forward and we keep moving. And I think that's a much more productive way of working. The downside is that the only thing we've talked about is policy. We haven't looked at curriculum or instructional issues at all. Now, I've spoken with Patty in the past, and her thinking may have changed, so we may need to find that out. But right at this point, she felt, last time I talked to her, that if an instructional presentation, which is, we used to get a lot of these things on the Policy and Instruction Subcommittee, if it's important enough for us to hear, it probably should be part of the whole board meeting, not on just a committee meeting. And I tend to think she's right. I also tend to think that it'll help weed out things that are maybe interesting and entertaining and self-congratulatory, but not actually probative. Because I think we got a lot of that stuff too, where we got stuff and you couldn't help but look at the teachers and administrators involved and feel good about them, but what did it tell us in terms of what we're doing? And I think the pressure of having to go to the full board may help weed some of that out. The other thing is we haven't looked at curriculum at all. And to my knowledge, there has been no curriculum approved in the now 3 years that I've been on the board. And I believe, if I remember correctly from Patty and Laurel, nothing got any strong looks during their time on the board prior to that, which means, if my math is correct, we're looking at a 5-year period where curriculum has gotten no meaningful attention from the board. It may or may not have gotten attention from the admin staff. There were claims that a lot of things got done. Problem is, they were claims and we never saw anything. So I'm trying to figure out how we do this. And I have a proposed suggestion, which may or may not work for a whole lot of reasons. But what I'm thinking is we set a schedule. I don't think we can meet twice a month all the time, partly because of the burden on us, but even more so because of the burden on Dr. DeBrito and Kelly Lucas. There's only so much of this stuff we could throw at them without burning them out, and that's not going to help anyone. And I think I learned that when we were scheduled twice a month, every month for a while, and I think Kelly Lucas and probably Dr. DeBrito, who is, too professional to admit it, were sort of desperately coming up for air. So what I'd like to suggest we consider, and it's just that, it's just a consideration, is that we set a schedule where, for example, August we meet once. September we meet twice. October we meet once. November we meet twice. December we meet once, because nobody's going to want to double up just before the holidays. And we kind of work that way with the idea that either we are folding some curriculum stuff in along the way, and it gets handled along the normal thing, but we get a little extra time to do everything, or we make a conscious decision to say, we will address curriculum during that second meeting every other month, and that's the only thing we're doing during that meeting, unless there's something outrageously pressing. So that's a proposal I've got. Think about how you feel about that, and let me know what you're thinking. If you want more time and don't want to actually make that decision now, that's reasonable. If you're comfortable with it and you think it's a good idea, we can go ahead and schedule things now. If you're uncomfortable and think it's a terrible idea, we can go ahead and can the whole idea right now also. Can do whatever you guys want.
My first inclination is that meeting twice a month is a lot. I would prefer your second offering, which is addressing policy 1 month and curriculum the next month. And
But that was with the idea that we're doing that during the second meeting of the month. We can't just, the problem we've been having, Terry, is that we have ditched curriculum completely. And what I'm saying is, if we want to claw back some time, schedule one extra meeting every other month to do curriculum, or just to add time and then work them all in along the way. The other option is we say, well, we need to do this and we have to work it in along the way as we go without extra meetings.
At the pace that we're going right now, I mean, we're completing 3 and 4 policies on average for every meeting that we've done. So maybe this is a third option. I mean, look at it that way. I just think that we have to be mindful of everybody's time, Dr. DeBrito's time, and the amount of time that we have to meet as a full board. And this isn't counting regular board meetings and special meetings.
Yeah, there's been a lot of special
I
meetings
have
lately, which that's
an
true.
idea to propose.
Sure.
If we, for the next school calendar year, went back to meeting once a month in an evening that we know is going to be a longer meeting. We went to weekdays. We were, in the beginning, we were meeting twice a month. We could kind of squeeze it in between all of our jobs and meetings and life on Friday mornings. But if we went back to once a month, instead of like an hour and a half, of just going into that meeting that it's going to be like a 3-hour meeting. So once a month, we have the time to get the policy stuff that we need to do, and then knowing that we're going to dedicate the rest of that time or the other half of that time to curriculum.
What do you
'Cause for
think,
me as a
Sean?
planner, if I know going in that like this
Yep.
one day a month, I'm gonna be gone for like 3 or 4 hours, but I'm gonna get everything done that we need to get done and plan for it, and then,
Yep.
sorry.
I personally agree 100% with what Jackie said. I am exactly in favor of that. I could easily, if it's at nighttime, I know I could put away three, whatever it takes, 4 hours. Hopefully, we would dedicate, half of the meeting, no matter where we are, to do that. Or second to that, it would be a dedication. I definitely prefer the dedicated meeting to a curriculum, not just let's half and half it, because then something will always run over and we'll get 15 minutes of curriculum in a regular meeting. I prefer number one, what Jackie just said, to be honest. Or if it's at once a month, 2 meetings is too much. I think if it's once every other month, now it's going from it's going from policy to curriculum to policy to curriculum throughout the year.
What do you think?
I'd prefer every other month. That's just how I feel, but I would absolutely work with Jackie's suggestion.
Okay. Cindy,
Yes.
is there an evening where we could schedule meetings in this space so that we have access to the electronics on a routine basis like that, once a month?
Probably not this building, not this room, but maybe meeting room 3, which is the one around the hall where the refrigerator is, or meeting room 4, which is across from the Board of Ed office. If you feel like it's,
I don't care about the size of the room. I'm only looking for the electronics.
Yeah, so I mean, even our Board of Ed conference room has electronics. The only problem with that is, as a public meeting, if somebody comes to watch, it's a little tighter, but we can make it work, obviously. Maybe if we know it's something that is, might bring audience in, we could move it across the hall or something like that. But this room, very unlikely, but yes, I think we could find a space.
One way or another is what
One
you're
way or
saying.
another, I think we can find something. It might,
Okay.
might be the meeting room 3, if it's it could never be a Monday or Tuesday, just because there's a crazy Tuesday, the building's open till 7, so you wouldn't want to be in there anyway, because people get their food in and out all day long. So if you pick like a Wednesday or Thursday evening, I think you'd have a better chance.
I would vote for Thursdays for what are probably obvious reasons.
Well, and full board meetings run on Wednesdays too.
Yeah.
We wouldn't
Yeah,
wanna.
of course there are
Can't do
Wednesdays.
Wednesdays. There's no way.
Yeah. All right, so you want to build a schedule once a month on Thursday evenings. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, can we have a motion
Yes.
to that effect, just to make it official?
Can I
Well,
contribute?
please, yes. I thought you would have kicked in. Go ahead.
So a couple of thoughts come to my mind. If we're inviting staff, which I think makes sense, sometimes evening is hard, if it's all we have. So I'd want it to at least be open to potentially offering, like we have been, a Friday time block. Especially if we're gonna have folks come to talk about what they're doing at the school level. Just a consideration. If we don't know the last time curriculum was approved, right, because the Board of Ed approves curriculum and the texts that are used. And we're going into a strategic planning phase where I do expect that curriculum's gonna come up for revision. We already know the elementary level, we're revising because of the science of reading and completely changing what we're doing. We don't want to prematurely approve what currently exists only to then be changing it and getting people like frazzled because they're coming to present on what they're doing, but in a few months, we're going to be revamping in other areas as well. So I just wanted to bring that up. I don't know if you need a motion of when you decide to have a meetings. I don't think so. You can
No,
decide
you're probably right.
we're gonna have meetings, Thursday night next month, this
Yep.
is the date, I don't think you need
I-
to have a motion for that.
I think you're probably right now that I think about it. Couple of responses, and then if other people want to kick something in, obviously, that's fine. I proposed initially setting this up during the day for exactly the reason you were citing. I was a school administrator, and it can be exhausting to have to stay late for meetings. And I personally, and I'm not objective and I'm not claiming to be, I personally felt like we would be doing our kids a better service if we let them devote their energies to kids instead of coming to us in the evenings. So I kind of agree with that concern. I'm not comfortable with not setting some kind of an actual schedule. I am the kind of person that I need things in a calendar, and I think it makes for better management. I don't want to be doing ad hoc meetings every month. When are we going to meet next month? That doesn't mean we can't change things, and it doesn't mean we can't add or delete meetings. As long as we give proper notice in FOIA, all of that's still up for grabs. But I would rather, whenever we're going to have a meeting schedule, I would rather have a meeting schedule set up that we can rely on, at least in a general sense. The only other thing I'll add, Dr. DeBrito, is the full board is not going to meet during the day
That I know.
in
yes.
order
Yes.
for staff to come do presentations.
But for this subcommittee, great opportunity for that.
And I don't disagree. I'm just wanted to make something clear. Go ahead.
So, as I'm listening to all of this, I had a question. Prior to this board committee, meetings were held in the evening.
They were held in the evening, and they were deliberately scheduled right before a full board meeting, which deliberately limited
Oh, that's
any ability to
right.
get anything done.
Okay,
Exactly 1 hour.
It was a control thing.
so thinking about what Dr. DeBrito said, that there's going to be lots of changes coming up. And for myself, never having looked at, worked with, learned about curriculum, I feel like until we're getting presentations, we could take that time to just get our sea legs on, at least for me, and probably not want to speak for Sean, but Sean as well, get our sea legs, know like what the process is, what it looks like, what we should be expecting, so that when the new curriculum does start coming, we're fully prepared. So we could utilize that time meeting Thursday evenings.
I think that makes a lot of good sense.
And I think that if we were going to get some presentations just to our committee before the full board, would it be possible to schedule that second, if needed, daytime meeting for the presentations, but not a monthly set day?
Yeah,
Because we
as
might not
I said,
always
we
need
can
it.
add or delete meetings anywhere along the way that we want.
So
That's
if
not
we-
a problem. We just have to give, 24 hours notice so that we're complying with FOIA laws.
And I'm with you on having a schedule, like I just need to visualize it and then plan for it. So if I knew like the third Thursday of every month, we have a subcommittee meeting, I know like nothing, I can't plan for anything else that day. But if we did once a Thursday, once a month, a Thursday evening that we all know not to plan anything else, we'll get done what needs to get done. If there's not a whole lot, we do what we do, have
Hey,
a
if
little
we're in and
professional
out in 30
development.
minutes, we're in and out in 30 minutes. Who cares?
And then I would want to check with Chris to make sure that that would be a night that he is also able to commit to it, because he would, or whatever representative was going to be here, just before completely setting it in stone. And then understanding that life happens and it might need to get switched, but just to have a jumping off point.
Personally, I think your suggestions are excellent, but that's just me. Sean, what do you think?
I concur with that, totally,
Same.
100%.
All right, so I'm going to suggest, based on Jackie's suggestion, that Dr. DeBrito and I put our heads together and come up with a time and a mechanism by which she can do a presentation to all of us about the nature of modern curriculum. I do have a strong background in this, but it's 5 years old. Things have probably changed. Even I know that. I'm sure there's plenty I can learn as well. And it makes perfect sense, you know, Jackie, it makes perfect sense to say, let's get us prepared so we know what we're doing when we're doing it. I think that's a very good idea.
Because then we won't be, at the lack of saying wasting the time, but we wouldn't be, I feel like I wouldn't be wasting the time of whoever was presenting if I'm having to ask all the basic questions so that I have an understanding. Like the other night when the gentleman came to talk about the loss, I was like, I didn't know what a lot of these words meant. So I'm taking up the time of the presentation. So if I have the core background baseline, then I can just focus on what's being presented.
So I can do that for sure, and I'm meeting with Chris on Monday anyway, so then Jim and I will meet and we'll do what we did before. We came up with some tentative dates, sent it out, and then worked towards finalizing them.
Okay.
All right, one last question. Can we agree to an August date now, since this is our July meeting and we do have to have an August meeting? And the only other thing I would add is that if possible, we should try to do it before the full board meeting so that if there's work that we need to, we can send it forward.
When's the full board meeting?
Darn good question.
It's on the 14th.
Okay.
What was that?
The 14th, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'm going to say that the 1st through the 10th, I cannot, because my husband's traveling and my babysitter's traveling.
Okay.
So through the 10th.
We could or couldn't.
I don't
Well,
know that I would
wait a
be
minute, the
able
10th is a Saturday.
Right, I'm just saying, so if we're doing Fridays, I would not be able to do that 9th. Possibly the 2nd, but
Could we do anything on the 12th or 13th? And I'm hesitating to say that because that means we all have 2 late evenings in 1 week, and I don't know how good that is.
Were we doing an evening, or
were
were you
we
trying to do
starting
it
the evening, or did we want to do
Oh,
the
I thought
August
you
one
guys
a
wanted
day?
to do it in the evening.
the day one for
Oh,
August?
that's fine with me.
Yeah, and once school
You want to
starts,
do
we
it during,
can-
you want to do it on the 2nd? Is that what you're suggesting?
She,
I
Or no?
think I can do the 2nd.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said you were away then.
I'm at the risk, I mean, I can,
you're talking about August, so I'm not here August 2nd.
Well, that would be a problem.
I'm sorry.
You mean you have a
I'm
life?
trying, I'm really hard to have one, it's hard.
All right, so that's not going to work. What about the 12th or 13th during the day?
Yeah, that's fine. Monday or Tuesday's
Monday
fine.
would,
Monday?
let's try for Monday the 12th. Nope.
I have to get work hours in at some point.
Do you want
Here-
to move to an
That's 2
evening?
women claiming they have a life in one minute.
All right, so.
All right, if you can't do it,
Hey, guys, yep.
I can make Monday
As
the
far as
12th
me,
work.
sorry.
Monday the
Whatever
12th.
the date is scheduled, I will be there. I just got to jump off for a work call in 2 minutes. So,
all right, you do your thing, we'll let you know.
So Terry said Monday the 12th.
Thanks,
Yeah,
everybody.
It would have to be after 10 because we have a
Okay.
9 a.m. meeting.
That's
so
fine.
I can have.
8 a.m. at 10:30, does that work?
After 10.
Excuse me, let me try that again.
And no, I can't be anywhere at 8 a.m.
No, I didn't want to be here at 8 a.m., that's just me being a knucklehead. All right, so the 12th at 10:30.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I'll try and find a room for you. This one will probably still be available at that time.
Yeah, in
but I
the
will find
morning,
out.
yeah.
All right, great. And Dr. D and I will put our heads together on the rest of it. 10:57, are we good to keep working, or?
I have a meeting that I squeezed in when the other grievance got canceled, so
At what time?
So,
If by 11:15, we can.
all right.
Well, I think we can probably at least go through the electronics one, because Jim added some language and we can at least discuss it.
We could look at that language. And there's something else I wanted to throw out about that policy that we can at least begin thinking about. So yeah, take a look at what I had added. I did reach out to, I gotta find the right thing here. I did reach out to Taya at one point and share a version of this. It might have been an earlier version, I can't remember. A version of this with her, and she liked it. So if, for whatever that's worth. And I had put this in italics just to make it easy to find the changes. And unfortunately, I didn't think to do that for the other policies. So I'm a dope.
What is,
TikTok, Ron.
I'm sorry?
TikTok. It's okay. There's TikTok. I don't think that's, I don't know how you spell
You
TikTok.
spelled it the way you would expect to spell it as an
I know.
English
I don't think
teacher.
that's how it is.
no,
Well,
it's TIKTOK.
Company, and they spell it their own way.
So what did I
It's one
include a C that shouldn't have been there?
TIKTOK.
One word.
Yes.
All one word.
Well, I gotta say, if that's my worst typo, I consider this a blessed day.
What is the closed forum part, just so I
sorry,
understand
say that
it?
again?
The closed forum part, like, what does that mean?
That's a legal concept. Do you want to explain this? I could do it, but, I'm sorry?
Please.
Okay. And this comes out of prior federal cases, I think mostly, and I'm sure state cases too, actually, but it comes out of federal law case where there was discussion about how much free speech rights kids have. So for example, some kid tells a teacher to go F themselves. Does that fall within their free speech rights? The courts have said no, because schools have a right and a responsibility to produce a more tightly controlled environment in order to keep the school environment productive. So they have the right to control what gets said about some things. So for example, when schools put their yearbooks together, there's always an advisor and sometimes the principal who goes through with a fine-tooth comb and makes sure that the kids are not putting anything in there that are inappropriate. And the kids know that that happens. It's understood that there's control there and they don't have the right to do those things. They do it all the time. I can remember having a teacher get into a lot of hot water with a yearbook years ago because she didn't look at it carefully enough, and the principal didn't find out till too late, so that was an ugly thing. Similarly with political stuff. Do kids have a right to talk about politics? Yes, but not in a manner or to the extent that it disrupts educational processes. So it's a closed forum. Or there can be partially open forums, which is kind of what you create. And Tom Mooney spoke about this the other day a little bit, sort of tangentially. When you set an agenda and you say, we can have public comment, but it's only on what's on the agenda. So if the agenda is the electronic forms policy, you can't get up and talk about what a crummy teacher SO is because you don't like the way he handles your kid.
Okay, so just to make sure I'm hearing and understanding, school's a closed forum, and that this policy does not in any way allow that to change.
it allows
Public
it to,
forum would be outside of school.
it
like-
allows it to change to the extent that a kid could, for example, go on Facebook and they could say, I really hate Mr. So-and-so, he gave me a terrible grade. That's protected speech, they can say that. What they can't do is, and this actually recently happened, go on TikTok, create fake identities as if they were the teachers involved, and then use that to make them sound like druggies or sex fiends or pedophiles or any of that stuff.
Gotcha.
So can you express a viewpoint personally in your private life in social media? Yeah, you have a right to do that. Including if you want to criticize a Board of Ed member, a school administrator, you have the right to do that. But what you don't have the right is to get really aggressive about it and mislead people and lie, or to make comments about, I hate him because he's fat. Well, that's got nothing to do with anything. That's just vilifying someone, you know?
So like threatening wouldn't be allowed, but like even within free speech, students cannot wear advertisements for drugs and alcohol, that type of thing, even though you might see somebody wearing a Marlboro hat, and there have been times where they don't even like think about it. They just put on a baseball cap and maybe it's advertising something, and a school official will be like, you got to take that off.
Right.
So within
It basically just goes along with like all the whole list of things, harassing, threatening,
Yes.
damaging, that just covers that.
anything that can
Cool.
certainly promote, like I said, alcohol, smoking, whatever. Other things too that can be so disruptive to the school environment, because it's a school.
Mm-hmm.
We do have other legal rights.
Gotcha.
So even though a student has a right to privacy, if you will, but if we get information that jeopardizes the safety of that student or others, that they brought an item to school, that gives us a right to search, right? Search their locker, search their person, so that's where it kind of branches off.
Okay.
And the understanding of the level of need for safety and well-being of everybody, that's where free speech, for example, will infringe
And it's-
upon.
It's like
what
going
the
through
school-
TSA at the
It's
airport.
it's all based on, it's all based on the concept that
Feels better,
schools
though.
need more control. If a police officer thinks that feels like he's got a good suspicion that a kid's got drugs in his backpack, he can't necessarily look at that. He's got to have
School
probable
official
cause.
can.
But a school official can.
They can't. Right.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I mean, I knew that was happening anyway, I just, the terminology was kind of,
And I
wasn't-
added the language at the very end of this section, starting with note, because I wanted to be clear that we are not attempting to take away kids' rights to
Any
use.
family's rights of anything, right?
Yeah, I mean, you still have your normal rights, but you can't use it to beat up on people. That's all it really
Right,
boils
and
down
there-
to.
And sometimes there are policies within the school district that, as a family, you're like, well, that's not gonna be a protocol for the family in their own home and out in the community. But for the design of a school, schools can set policy, because we're the ones that have to be responsible during the school day. Like, it's supposed to be, a partnership, and some of these situations are not easy at all when you're calling a family to say, this happened, your child was involved, because you're building relationships. And they're like, but you know us and you know my kid, but if your child was putting themselves and others in potential danger, you have to come at it from that perspective.
Or disrupting the educational process.
I mean, it really is sad when they get caught with something they shouldn't have, or they do something they shouldn't.
Right, does that answer your
It
question?
does, yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments about this particular section of the policy?
I think it's good. I think we addressed, like you said, what Taya's concern, which I know are not just Taya's concern, that's I know everybody, most people had concerns about this, and I think we were able to get it down to exactly what needs to be there to cover the topic of social media.
Okay, so this is where I'm going to throw a monkey wrench into the discussion. During my conversation with Taya, where she told me she liked this a lot, she said she likes it a lot, but it doesn't go far enough. She wants to ban cell phones. And I can see two sides of this personally. I don't think it's practical at all, grades 9 and up. I think it's probably very impractical, grades 7 and 8. I don't see any reason why it should be a problem for the younger kids. But I think you gave us a suggestion the other day that really might clarify what to do. So I would like us to consider, and Patty knows this is on the table and she's okay with it, I would like us to consider tabling this policy for the time being and setting up a forum sometime in September to get the community to come in and talk to us about how they feel about cell phones in schools. Because I don't, like I said, I have just really mixed feelings about it myself. I think cell phones in schools are a disaster. I also think that trying to ban them is crazy.
Here's my reason for supporting access to cell phones in schools. We, as a community, are a pretty small, pretty similar community where families have lived here for generations. LA banned cell phones in schools. LA is a very diverse, very large community where even without a cell phone, students have access to others, differences, cultures, learning. They see it every day. I also feel, I'm kind of jumping all over the place. So I think that this can be an opportunity for kids and students to learn how to safely use technology and cell phones, learn about the risks and dangers. It's an opportunity for, the school, part of a technology class or part of a whatever health class can be, okay, these are your phones, these are the dangers, this is what this app is, this is what that does. Because I'm a Xennial, Gen X, I didn't have any technology through school, but then I got out of school, was given a cell phone and the internet, and I knew absolutely nothing and made some very dangerous choices. And I am of the mind that, yes, if a family does not want their students to have access to cell phones and technology until they're 13, 16, 18, whatever, that's fine. But students and kids need to have a basic understanding of what all of this is and what it can do, how it can be helpful, but also how it can be very dangerous, both physically, emotionally, mental health. So that when they're in a situation, when they're given a cell phone or they're given a computer or they're at a friend's house that has one and they're just going into it without any background whatsoever, that is when it can also be very dangerous. So
You're talking about education. You're really talking about teaching.
Right. Teaching that instead of just banning no cell phones. We're not going to talk about cell phones. We're not going to have cell phones. There's no cell phones.
That's what we were intending at all, to
I
ban
think
it.
that
Well,
having
Taya wants to ban them.
Ban them being used in school freely.
Correct.
But you're
She wants to
talking
ban them
about-
from schools.
Right.
she doesn't want anybody, from my understanding, is like LA, like absolutely no cell phones in school, period.
I believe that's her
That
view.
is, yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we can't do a more nuanced approach. For example, if you go back to what we've read a little bit, and I haven't gotten as far as I want to, so I can't say too much, but it talks about in the anxious generation, about the idea that there were built-in milestones that help kids to grow up. They understood there were these little rituals along the way, some of which were religiously oriented, and that as we have changed, they have lost those. So they don't have those markers to work toward or learn from. Well, maybe one of the markers is you can't have a cell phone K through 6, but you can 6 through 8 or 6 through 12 or something like that. And that's where sort of the educational opportunity arises. It doesn't have to be that way. I'm not prescribing. I'm saying I'm suggesting I think there's a way to accommodate your concerns, which I think are legitimate, and my concerns, which are the only things I've ever seen cell phones do in schools is distract kids and create havoc with mean things they say to each other online or through text. And I had a lot of experience with that. But that's my prejudice, and I know it's my prejudice. So I want to temper it. So let me hold on 1 second. So my suggestion here is not that we ban cell phones. My suggestion is we pull the community together to have them tell us what they think we ought to do. Because you made that suggestion, and frankly, I walked out of there thinking, okay, this woman's brilliant. It just made so much sense to me. And I was talking with Patty about this, and I said, Patty, I think this is an opportunity to put into action exactly what Jackie had suggested. And it makes perfect sense. It's a live issue. Everybody's going to have feelings about this. Some parents are going to want them gone. They're not going to want the kids to have them. Some parents are going to want them to have them because, and Patty's an example of this. Patty is convinced that she has to have immediate access to her son in the possibility of an emergency.
Yes.
And I would look at her and say, we survived for several thousand years without that. It was fine. But she doesn't want to hear that.
We're never going back to that. I want
understand
the
that.
fall of cell phones and internet. I welcome it. I would love to raise my children the way I was raised in the 80s, but it's not going away.
I don't think it is either. That's why I say I have a prejudice, and I know that's what it is. But it would be potentially useful for us to get some feedback from the community.
And from really at the school level as well, because I do know that they don't allow phones to be out, but that doesn't matter to the kids. They are still, we saw video footage in classrooms without permission, but it was happening. They do misuse it. They're texting each other, meeting in different sections of the school, in the bathrooms, not utilizing it, not focusing on what they need to focus on at school. It's not part of any standards. I mean, it actually presents in a destructive manner at the school level.
I'm not arguing that. I mean, the previous policy really didn't do too much with cell phones because they weren't a thing then. I mean, I've been in situations and seen situations where you walk into a building, whether it's like a classroom or a dinner or a meeting, where all the phones go in a bin by the door. You come in, phone goes there, you get it when you leave. If there's a notification, something comes through, emergencies happen. My thing is, I want to be able to reach my kids. We had a day where you could not contact the schools.
There was a number you could call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I know that there was a plan in place, but if the unspeakable happens, unspeakable situations happen, I want my student who's old enough to have a phone, my elementary kids don't have phones, to be able to have access out of the school.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm getting
not trying to
wildly
be rude to you.
passionate. We just need to
I know
reel it back in.
I know what you feel. She hasn't had a chance to say a word to us yet.
I'm listening as this conversation is going on. I understand that there are differing viewpoints, and they're all valid. They're all completely valid. But the focus of the conversation is whether or not this device helps our children learn in school or doesn't help our children learn in school. And I'm falling on the end of, if it's not assisting and it is that much of a distraction, then we have to have a mechanism in place that either allows it to be there, but they don't have access until such and such a time where they can get it back from the teacher, or it's not there at all. Because if it's that much of a distraction and, you know, kids aren't where they're supposed to be,
I guarantee you that's
concerns
true.
me.
I guarantee you
that
that's
concerns
true.
me greatly, because you're not there to be on your phone. You're there to learn.
But you can still have it secured. As
Exactly.
opposed to, you can't have it on you ever, right? You can have it in your backpack, you can have it secured in a locker.
Right.
When you're leaving, you have it. Like, I think there are those parameters. And if I'm not mistaken, at the school level, they already have structures like that. They didn't need to wait for a policy to establish policies at the school level. So I think that's, but now we're hyper aware.
Encourage conversation with the community and the staff and teachers,
Correct.
like
Right.
what
And
and how can we make this work
and-
best?
And this
Exactly.
feedback from the staff is gonna be very important,
Yeah.
because the last thing you wanna do is put a policy in place that is not enforced equitably.
that's my big issue.
I-
If you can't enforce it, then what good is having it at all?
When I
Because they're
started-
just going to do what they want to do.
When I started my career in administration, I'm gonna shut this down soon, I'm sorry. When I started my career in administration, the policy in the school I was in, and this was a district-wide policy, was that if you were late to class 3 times, it counted as an absence. If you were absent a certain number of times, you lost credit for the course, which meant that routinely being absent could really put you in a lot of hot water. It came to pass where that was going to prevent a kid maybe from graduating, and the parents fussed, I'll put it that way, and the lawyers looked at the administrators and said, we know, you know for a fact, that some teachers don't follow that rule and some teachers do. If you can't demonstrate that it is equitably applied, you cannot sustain this, you're gonna lose this case, let the kid graduate. And after that, it was taken off the policies and stricken from the handbooks. So the feedback from the staff's gonna be key. Putting a policy in place that they won't enforce is not sustainable.
Agreed.
All right, so should I tell Patty that we'd like to schedule a forum? Is that a good thing to do, or?
Absolutely.
All right, I will talk to Patty and Dr. D about this, and given everything else, I'm thinking, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I just want to say something real quick. In talking with Patty about planning a time, keeping in mind that it can't be during the day. A lot of parents are working.
Oh,
can't
it would have to be
holiday
during the
weekend.
evening.
Like it would have to be at like an equitable time, and I would almost say perhaps two dates.
You could talk about that too.
Just because I know parents and community members, there's never going to be a universal time, but just the equitable
You might
access
offer
of
like
meeting.
4 o'clock one day, and another day might be 7. So you can kind of, you know, whether you want to go before dinner or you want to go after, like,
Yeah,
All
just
right,
keeping all
so
those things in mind. So I
Have a motion to adjourn, I'm not trying to
Seconded.
be rude to
I
you,
know.
okay. Okay, motion passes. Any discussion? No, goodbye, we're done.
thank you, everybody.
I don't know how to shut that stuff off, so I ain't touching it.